The discovery, the vast emptiness of space stretched out before Ethan as he piloted his small salvage ship toward the old orbital station. The hum of the engine was the only sound filling the cockpit. His eyes narrowed, focusing on the distant station drifting through the stars. It had been abandoned for years, maybe even decades. No one had dared to explore it. No one except him. Ethan had always been the type to seek out the forgotten, the lost, and the unexplored. As an ex-Marine, he was used to finding his way in dangerous places. And now, working as a freelancer, he had a knack for scavenging old tech. Today, the station was his next big, find another job, another piece of history waiting to be uncovered. Approaching station, Ethan muttered to himself, tapping the controls. The small screen in front of him flickered, showing the station's dim outline as it rotated slowly. The structure looked worn, with patches of rust and crumbling metal. Yet, there was something strangely compelling about it, something that made Ethan's pulse quicken. It had been too long since he'd come across a treasure like this. The station had been a part of a project, long forgotten by the rest of the galaxy. Once, it had been bustling with activity researchers, engineers, and military personnel. But now, it was nothing more than a relic, drifting in the cold void, cut off from the rest of civilization. The kind of place where forgotten secrets could be buried. Ethan docked his ship on one of the exterior docking ports, the metal screeching slightly as the clamps engaged. As he unstrapped himself from his seat, a chill ran through him. It was always eerie stepping into places like this. Abandoned stations often hid things that people didn't want found. He grabbed his gear, a flashlight, a small scanner, and his standard issue pistol just in case. He knew better than to wander into an unknown environment without being prepared. The past had a way of catching up with people. The moments he spent on military operations had taught him that. The airlock hissed as he made his way inside. The lights flickered on automatically, casting a weak yellow glow along the corridor. Dust hung thick in the air, the scent of stale, recycled oxygen and rust. The silence was deafening. No movement, no signs of life. It was like stepping into the past, into a place that had been left behind for reasons unknown. Ethan's boots made soft, metallic clinks as he walked down the narrow hallway. His flashlight illuminated the dark corners of the corridor, revealing old signage and faded text and symbols that didn't make much sense. The entire station felt abandoned, as if it had been forgotten on purpose. As he continued deeper into the station, he couldn't shake the sense that something was off. It wasn't just the silence, it was the feeling that there was more to this place than it seemed, that there was something hidden here. His scanner beeped, breaking the stillness. He looked down at the display. There were faint energy readings, coming from deeper within the station. It was subtle at first, but it was there. Someone had powered up certain parts of the station. Someone or something. Not what I expected, Ethan murmured, raising an eyebrow. The station shouldn't be operational. Everything here was supposed to be decommissioned. The scanners. Readings grew stronger as he moved forward. The temperature dropped slightly, the air feeling colder, heavier. As he approached the main control room, the door slid open with a soft, mechanical whir. It was the first sign of life he'd encountered. He stepped inside, his eyes immediately scanning the room. The control panels were still intact, though covered in dust and cobwebs. Some buttons flickered faintly, as though they were waiting to be touched. In the center of the room was an old consulate screen, dark, but still showing faint outlines of data. Ethan approached it cautiously, tapping a few keys on the panel. The screen flickered to life, displaying a series of encrypted files. Could be something useful, he thought, but as he began working on the console, his mind wandered to the energy readings. Whoever had been here last had gone through great lengths to keep the station alive, to keep it hidden. And if they'd left anything behind, it was likely something important. Something they didn't want the rest of the galaxy to find. Hands flew over the keys, working quickly to bypass the encryption. As the screen cleared, the words Forbidden Alliance flashed before his eyes. He froze. The phrase made no sense. A Forbidden Alliance. What was that doing in a station like this? He scrolled through the files, his heart beginning to race. What he found next shocked him: documents detailing a covert agreement between Earth and an alien race. The alliance was supposed to remain secret, hidden from the rest of the galaxy. The details were sparse, but what was there pointed to a dark, tangled past involving intergalactic politics and betrayal. This was no ordinary find. Ethan leaned back in his chair, processing what he had just uncovered. A forbidden alliance, one that had been erased from history. Why was this information buried in a forgotten orbital station? Who had gone to such lengths to hide it? And why did the files indicate that the alliance had failed, leading to disastrous consequences for everyone involved? The answer was buried deep in the records, but it wasn't fully unlocked yet. The pieces of the puzzle were scattered, but something was pulling him in. He had to know more. He had to find out what had been kept hidden. And just as he made his decision to search deeper, a sudden movement caught his eye. Someone was out there. Ethan stood quickly, his hand instinctively going to his pistol. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He wasn't alone. The hidden recordathon's hand hovered near his pistol as the sound of footsteps echoed in the dim corridor beyond the control room. His heart raced. He was certain he was alone when he first entered the station. But now, someone or something was moving around the station's dark hallways, unseen. Yet so close he could almost feel its presence. His fingers tightened around the grip of his gun as he slowly stepped away from the console, keeping his back to the wall. The cold, sterile air of the station pressed in on him. Silence enveloped him once again, but it was a different kind of silence, now one filled with tension. As though the very station itself was waiting, holding its breath. "Who's there?" Ethan called out softly, his voice steady but laced with suspicion. No answer. His eyes darted to the monitors, half expecting to see something or someone on the security feeds, but the screens were blank, showing only static and distortion. Whoever or whatever was in the station was smart enough to avoid being caught on the cameras. Ethan took a deep breath. He didn't have time for games. There was something bigger at play here. That forbidden alliance he'd discovered in the encrypted files, it had to be the key to everything. The reason the station was still alive. The reason he'd been drawn here. The secrets it held could change the course of history, and someone else clearly wanted them to. He crept forward, cautiously moving towards the hallway that led deeper into the station. Every step was measured, careful. He couldn't afford to be reckless. His mind raced through the information he'd uncovered so far. The secret alliance between Earth and the alien race. The cryptic files pointing to failed experiments, and the indication that something went terribly wrong. Focus, he muttered to himself, pushing forward with renewed purpose. If there was someone else here, they wouldn't stop him from learning the truth. His scanner beeped again, a soft, steady pulse. It was coming from the far side of the station, on the lower levels. The signal was faint, but it was there. Another piece of the puzzle. Without thinking, Ethan began moving toward the source, trusting his instincts. The deeper he went, the more the station seemed to change. The corridors grew narrower, and the walls appeared older, as though the station itself was beginning to show signs of age, strange, considering how active it seemed earlier. Something didn't add up. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and his breath came out in visible puffs. The faint humming of the ship's systems faltered, and then without warning, the lights flickered. Darkness followed, but only for a moment. When the lights returned, Ethan found himself standing in front of a large, sealed door. This wasn't part of the public access areas. This was a restricted zone, one that had been hidden behind layers of security. "This is it," Ethan whispered, his pulse quickening. The door was an ancient model, clearly built to withstand decades of neglect. The access panel next to it was barely functional, flickering with random patterns of static. But the faint pulse from his scanner was now stronger, pointing directly at the door. There was something inside, something important he reached for. The panel, trying to bypass the lock. His hands flew over the buttons, but the door remained stubbornly closed. The lock was a tougher code than he expected. His frustration grew, but as he worked, the temperature seemed to drop further. It wasn't just a chill, it was as though something deep within the station was alive, responding to his presence. Finally, after what felt like hours, the door clicked open, releasing a sharp hiss of air. The room inside was dark, and a sense of unease washed over him. He stepped cautiously into the room, shining his flashlight around. The walls were lined with more strange symbols, these ones glowing faintly in the dark. At the center of the room stood an old archive terminal, large, bulky, and clearly built to withstand time. Ethan approached the terminal, his breath shallow. The pulse from his scanner grew stronger, now accompanied by a low, rhythmic hum from the terminal itself. Whatever had been locked away in here had been waiting for him to unlock it. His fingers brushed the terminal's interface. The screen flickered to life, displaying lines of code that seemed to dance before his eyes. The information flowed quickly, too quickly, but it was clear that the file he had been searching for was finally being decrypted. "Come on," Ethan muttered under his breath, his mind racing. Suddenly, the terminal froze. The code on the screen scrambled, twisting into shapes that made no sense. Then, just as quickly, a message appeared, initiating protocol. The legacy of the Alliance. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just a file. It was something deeper, something far more dangerous. The screen switched again, this time showing a live video feed, distorted, but still clear enough for Ethan to recognize. It was a recording, and in it stood an alien figure, its features blurred by time. The figure spoke in a language that Ethan didn't understand, but the translation came up quickly. "You have found this place. Now the truth must be told. The Alliance was not a partnership, was a prison, a sacrifice. We offered the humans power, and in return they gave us what we needed to survive." The voice in the recording continued, but Ethan's mind was already reeling. The truth was more horrifying than he could have imagined. The Forbidden Alliance had not been a simple agreement, had been a trap, a deal with a price far higher than anyone had known. The humans had traded their survival for something far darker, and it seemed that the legacy of the Alliance was far from over. Ethan's mind raced as he absorbed the implications. The station wasn't just a lost relic, it was a prison, a key to something even bigger, something that could change everything. And then a loud bang echoed through the station, jolting Ethan out of his thoughts. The sound was followed by a shrill alarm, a warning that things were about to get a lot worse. He quickly spun around, his hand reaching for his pistol. Someone else was in the station, and they were coming for him. Asterisk, the intruder. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest as the sharp alarm echoed through the abandoned station. The shrill sound seemed to vibrate through his bones, making the walls of the old facility feel even more oppressive. The station, once silent and dormant, was now waking up. Something was coming, and it wasn't going to be friendly. His hand instinctively gripped the pistol at his side. The voice in the terminal had warned him that someone would come, but the timing was too perfect. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was no coincidence. Whoever or whatever had been hiding on this station was ready to act, and they weren't going to let him leave with the secrets he had uncovered. Ethan moved quickly, his boots making soft echoes as he backed away from the terminal. His eyes darted to the doorway, every shadow in the dimly lit hallway now a potential threat. The station's systems flickered, the lights dimming and pulsing, casting long, jagged shadows across the walls. The temperature had dropped even further, the air feeling thick, almost suffocating. Another loud bang echoed from down the hall, this time closer. The sound of footsteps followed, heavy, deliberate, the sound of someone or something moving in his direction. He could hear the faint worry of mechanical limbs, like the steps were too precise, too calculated. Who the hell is that? Ethan whispered to himself, his voice barely audible as he pressed his back to the wall. His mind raced, trying to piece together what he knew. This station was supposed to be abandoned, but someone had been here, someone who didn't want him. To find the truth, the steps grew louder, closer, and Ethan knew he didn't have much time. He couldn't just stay hidden forever. He needed to know who or what was after him. The mystery surrounding the Forbidden Alliance was already more than he could handle, and now there was a new player involved, one that wasn't going to let him uncover any more secrets. Taking a deep breath, Ethan made his move. He sprinted down the dark hallway, his eyes scanning the area for an escape route. The sound of his footsteps echoed in the corridor, but they were soon drowned out by the approaching intruder's footsteps. He needed to find cover, and fast. He reached a junction, the hallway splitting into 3 different directions. One path led deeper into the station, toward what he knew was the core reactor. Another path veered to the left, toward the lower levels. The third was an old maintenance corridor, dark and narrow. Ethan didn't hesitate. He darted into the maintenance corridor, the narrow space giving him an advantage. If he could stay out of sight long enough, he might be able to figure out who was hunting him and why. He pressed against the cool metal wall, his breath shallow and quick. The sound of the intruder's footsteps grew nearer, now accompanied by an unsettling mechanical noise. It sounded like the intruder was not alone, and they were closing in from multiple directions. Suddenly, a low voice, distorted and metallic, echoed down the hall. "You shouldn't have come here, human." The voice sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. It was cold, methodical and unnerving. The tone wasn't one of anger, but of someone simply stating a fact. This wasn't just a guard or a soldier. It was something far more dangerous. Ethan held his breath, staying perfectly still as the footsteps grew closer. Whoever this was, they weren't just a threat, they were part of something much larger, something connected to the mysterious Forbidden Alliance that Ethan had uncovered. The voice spoke again, louder this time, as though the intruder had stopped, right outside his hiding place. "You will not leave with the knowledge you found," it said, the words lingering in the air. "It was never meant for you." Ethan's fingers tightened around the grip of his gun. His instincts told him to move fast, but his mind told him to wait. Whoever this was, they weren't looking for a fight, they were here for something. The question was, what did they want? With him, he could hear them shifting around, their movements calculated, deliberate. The moment was tense, each passing second dragging on longer than the last. Then, without warning, a figure appeared at the end of the corridor. It wasn't human. The figure was tall, its body encased in a dark, armored exosuit. It was sleek and mechanical, with glowing red eyes that scanned the surroundings, searching for any movement. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The creature was unlike anything he'd seen before, its presence commanding and terrifying. The being moved with precise robotic steps, scanning the area around it. Its movements were deliberate, as if it already knew where Ethan was hiding. The way it moved was unnervingly efficient. It wasn't looking for a fight. It was looking for someone. Ethan's pulse quickened. The creature didn't seem to notice him yet, but he knew that would change soon. The exosuit it wore was sophisticated, much more advanced than anything human technology could produce. Whoever sent this thing wasn't just a faction, they were a force. And Ethan had just walked right into the heart of their operation. The figure paused, standing motionless in the middle of the corridor. For a moment it was silent, like it was waiting for something. Then it spoke again, its voice cold and mechanical. "Activate the secondary protocol," it said flatly. "The human has found the forbidden knowledge. We cannot allow him to escape." The command sent a wave of panic through Ethan. He had to act fast, but before he could make his move, the figure turned toward the junction, and the lights in the hallway dimmed even further, casting long shadows along the walls. With no time to lose, Ethan silently slipped deeper into the maintenance corridor, moving like a shadow. The hunt was on. The chase. Ethan's breath came in short, sharp bursts as he moved deeper into the maintenance corridors. The air seemed to grow thicker with each passing moment, the weight of what was happening pressing on him. He could feel the metallic walls around him closing in, but there was no time to waste. The figure, the intruder, was out there, and it was hunting him. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to move faster, but he forced himself to stay quiet, stay calm. His hand never left the grip of his gun as he slinked through the narrow, dark passage. The only sound in the silence was his own footsteps, and even those felt too loud. He could hear the faint click of metal on metal, echoing through the corridor as the intruder advanced. Whoever wore whatever this thing was, it was methodical, calculating. It knew the station, and it knew exactly where he was. Every step he took felt like a race against time, the feeling of being pursued so close it made his skin crawl. Ethan slid into a small alcove in the hallway, pressing himself against the cold wall. His heart pounded in his chest as he tried to slow his breathing. The figure was coming closer, its steps resonating through the metallic floors, growing louder with every second. It was getting closer, but it didn't seem to know exactly where he was yet. He peeked around the corner, just enough to catch a glimpse of the intruder. It stood tall, covered head to toe in a sleek, dark exosuit that shimmered in the dim light. The red lights on its chest blinked, scanning the area with methodical precision. A strange hum emanated from it, a low frequency that seemed to vibrate through the walls. Ethan's eyes darted across the room, searching for a way out. The only exit was directly in front of the intruder. He had no choice. He'd have to move. Fast, the figure spoke again, its voice as cold and mechanical as ever. activate search mode. The human is nearby. The protocol must be completed. Ethan's stomach tightened. The protocol, that was what the figure had mentioned earlier. He didn't know what it was, but it was clear that whatever it involved, Ethan couldn't let it happen. He took a deep breath, his body tensing in preparation. This was his moment. He had no choice. Now he couldn't let the station's secrets fall into the wrong hands. And if that meant he had to face whatever this thing was, then so be it. With a sudden burst of speed, Ethan darted down the corridor, his boots slapping the metal floors. The intruder's sensors must have picked up his movement, because the lights along the walls flickered violently as the creature turned toward him. Target acquired. The figure's cold voice announced, and Ethan heard the unmistakable sound of weapons activating. He didn't waste a second. He sprinted faster, pushing his body to the limit, weaving through the station's dark passageways. The lights above him flickered again, and the entire station seemed to come alive, almost as though it were closing in on him. He reached a junction, and in that moment, he had to make a choice. Left, where the station's main reactor was located, or right, to the lower levels, where the station's storage areas might hold a way out. His mind raced. The reactor could give him access to the station's main control room, but it was also the most dangerous part of the station. If the intruder had control of the reactor, it could be disastrous. Ethan took a hard right, hoping the storage levels would offer him some cover. He pushed forward, the lights above him dimming as the walls narrowed. The hallway felt tighter now, the shadows creeping in like a suffocating force. The sound of the intruder's heavy footsteps was close now, echoing down the corridor like the ticking of a clock. He reached a small control panel and quickly hacked into it, the screen flickering to life. His fingers worked quickly, bypassing the security protocols, trying to access whatever information he could. The terminal beeped and flickered as the intruder's footsteps drew nearer. Protocol activated. The voice of the figure echoed from the end of the hall. Target locked. Just then, the entire station shuddered. The hum of the energy system kicked into overdrive, and the lights flared brightly for a split second before they went out completely, plunging Ethan into total darkness. The only sound now was the pounding of his heart. The world had gone silent, except for the creature's footsteps, which had now slowed. Ethan's breath hitched. He couldn't let this be the end. He couldn't let this thing catch him, not when he was so close to uncovering the full truth. He had to find a way to stop the intruder, or the station's secrets would be lost forever. Suddenly, there was a sharp crack, and the emergency lights flickered on, casting a harsh red glow across the walls. The figure was still following, but now it wasn't alone. There were more of them, other figures emerging from the shadows, moving in unison like a well-oiled machine. Each one was identical tall, armored, and cold, with those same red glowing eyes. Ethan's pulse quickened. He had underestimated how far this would go, but now there was no turning back. They were closing in, and the secrets of the station were just beyond his reach. It was time to act. The confrontation. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, his breath shallow as the footsteps of the intruders echoed in the darkened corridor. The red emergency lights cast long, distorted shadows on the walls, creating an oppressive atmosphere that seemed to close in on him with every passing second. His mind raced, calculating his next move. But the reality was undeniable. He was being hunted, and there was nowhere to hide. The station, once a silent, abandoned relic, was now a living trap, its dark secrets awakening with each passing moment. The sound of footsteps, synchronized and mechanical, echoed down the hallway, and Ethan could hear their heavy breathing as they grew closer. His hands clenched around the gun, the weight of it feeling strangely reassuring in his grip. The figures that emerged from the shadows were identical tall, imposing, with dark exoskeletons and glowing red eyes that scanned the corridor with relentless precision. The low hum of their technology reverberated through the air like a deep, mechanical heartbeat. Ethan's mind raced. Who were they? Why were they here? And what did they want with him? These were questions he had yet to answer, but one thing was certain: they weren't just some rogue security force. These beings were connected to the Forbidden Alliance he had uncovered. But how? As the figures neared, Ethan spotted a small alcove to his left and old maintenance shaft that led deeper into the station's guts. It was his only chance. Without a second thought, he bolted for it, sliding through the narrow opening just as the intruders rounded the corner. His body pressed against the cold metal walls as he crawled through the shaft, trying to remain as quiet as possible. The echo of the mechanical footsteps faded for a moment, and he allowed himself a quick breath. He had gained some distance, but the danger was far from over. The shaft wound down, and Ethan's thoughts churned. He had to find a way to stop them. Whatever it was that had awakened the station's deadly protectors, he knew that if the intruders reached the terminal he had accessed earlier, they would lock the station down completely, erasing any trace of the Forbidden Alliance. A flicker of movement caught his eye, and Ethan froze. A shadow darted across the narrow opening ahead of him, followed by the faint sound of whispering voices. The figures had found his trail. They were close to close. He hurried his pace, his fingers slipping against the walls of the shaft as he scrambled forward. But suddenly, the entire station lurched violently, throwing Ethan off balance. The lights flickered once more, and the whir of machinery filled the air, as if the station itself were alive, reacting to their presence. Then, without warning, the shaft split in two. One path led deeper into the station, while the other ascended toward the upper levels. Panic surged in Ethan's chest. If he went deeper, he might find something in another terminal, maybe more answers, but the risk was too high. The upper levels might be his only escape. The sound of the intruders' footsteps grew louder again, signaling that they had caught up. Ethan gritted his teeth. Time was running out. He had no choice but to head upward. As he made his way toward the exit, he heard a voice echoing through the station. It was low and mechanical, but there was something distinctly human about it, something that sent a chill down his spine. "You've seen too much." "Human," the voice said, its tone ominous and calm. "The station's secrets are not meant for you. Leave now, or be destroyed." Ethan's blood ran cold. It was the same voice he had heard earlier, but now it seemed more personal. Whoever was controlling these beings, they knew him. They knew his every move. Ethan emerged from the shaft, finding himself in a darkened control room. The large, circular space was empty, save for the rows of glowing panels that surrounded the room. It was eerily quiet, and for a moment Ethan thought he was safe. But then the air grew heavy dense with an unseen force. His hand flew to his weapon. But before he could react, the room's doors slammed shut, sealing him inside. He spun around, desperately trying to find another way out, but it was too late. The intruders had trapped him. The low hum filled the room again, and the control panels flickered to life. But this time, it wasn't just the station's systems that activated. It was something far more dangerous. A series of holographic Displays appeared in the center of the room, showing data he couldn't begin to understand. Symbols that seemed to shift and change, representing something ancient, something not of this world. From the shadows, one of the armored figures emerged, stepping into the light. This one was different from the other staller, its exosuit more advanced, with intricate designs that glowed faintly with the same red light. "You should not have come here," it said, its voice laced with disdain. "You think you can stop what has already begun. You are merely a witness to the end." The figure's words sent a cold shiver through Ethan. He couldn't let this happen, not after everything he had uncovered, not after everything he had fought for. "You're wrong," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "I'm not just a witness. I'm going to stop you." The figure's eyes narrowed, and a mechanical click echoed through the room. It reached for a weapon at its side, a sleek, deadly-looking energy blade that hummed with power. The atmosphere in the room shifted, thickening with tension. Ethan's hand tightened around his pistol, preparing for the fight of his life. He wasn't just going to give up, not now. The fate of the station, of the galaxy, depended on his actions. With a swift motion, he fired. The energy pulse from his gun hit the figure's suit, sending a jolt of electricity through its systems. The figure staggered, but didn't fall. The battle had only just begun. Asterisk. The revelation, the energy blade in the intruder's hand hummed louder, glowing with a fierce, unnatural light as it swept through the air. Ethan's heart raced, his mind working at lightning speed. The figure wasn't just a soldier, it was something else, something far more dangerous. But even as the blade neared, his instincts kicked in. He ducked just in time, rolling across the cold metal floor to evade the strike. He fired again, but the figure was too fast. With a fluid, almost predatory motion, it raised a shield that deflected the shot, sending a blast of energy, ricocheting off the walls. Sparks flew, and the room lit up in chaotic flashes of light. The hum of the blade grew louder, almost drowning out Ethan's thoughts. Is this really how it ends? Ethan thought to himself, adrenaline flooding his veins. No, I can't let it end like this. He scrambled to his feet, looking for anything that could give him an advantage. The room was filled with controls and panels, but they were all unfamiliar alien technology. The station's systems had been built for something far beyond what Earth could imagine. As the intruder advanced, Ethan's eyes darted to a control panel in the far corner of the room. He had no idea what it did, but it was his only hope. He dashed towards it, but before he could get close, the figure lunged, its blade slicing through the air with deadly precision. Ethan barely managed to dodge, the blade grazing his arm and sending a shock of pain up his spine. Blood soaked into his sleeve, but he gritted his teeth, pushing through the pain. He wasn't going to die here. Not like this. With a desperate movement, Ethan grabbed the nearest object, a metal pipe lying abandoned in the corner, and swung it with all his might. The figure's red eyes glowed brighter as it deflected the blow with a swift motion, but it was enough to buy Ethan a moment of time. He sprinted towards the control panel and slammed his hand down on the button, hoping against hope that it would do something. The room groaned in protest as a massive mechanical sound reverberated through the walls. A panel near the ceiling slid open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a strange, glowing crystal, its surface shimmering with energy. The hum from the station grew louder as the crystal pulsed, lighting up the entire room. The figure froze. "What is that?" Ethan muttered under his breath, his eyes wide as he stared at the crystal. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, a powerful relic, from a time long gone. It seemed to resonate with the station, almost as if it were connected to the very heart of the ship. The figure's voice crackled over the room's intercom, low and menacing. "You shouldn't have activated that. You don't understand its power." Ethan's mind raced. "What do you mean? What is this?" The figure stepped closer, its armored form illuminated by the glowing crystal. "That is the heart of the Forbidden Alliance. The last remnants of the pact between your people and the ancients. A power beyond your comprehension, locked away." For a reason, Ethan's thoughts whirled. The Forbidden Alliance. He had only uncovered a fraction of the truth, but now he was beginning to understand the true scope of what had happened here. This station, this crystallit, wasn't just a forgotten outpost. It was a key to something far more dangerous. The intruder's voice turned cold, almost pitying. "You think you can stop it? You think you can undo centuries of control, of power? The Alliance was not a mistake, was inevitable. And now you've activated the final protocol. There is no going back." Before Ethan could react, the room around him began to shake, the station's walls groaning as if it were waking. From a deep slumber, the crystal pulsed violently, sending waves of energy rippling through the air. The ground beneath Ethan's feet shifted, and a massive sound like the roar of a distant storm echoed through the station. "The power is being released," the figure warned, its voice distant. "The station is beginning its process of ascension, and you are part of it." Ethan's eyes widened as the reality of the situation hit him. This wasn't just a hidden military outpost. This station was a vessel, a key part of an ancient plan that was now unfolding before his eyes. The Forbidden Alliance wasn't just a relic of the past. It was a living, breathing entity, one that had been waiting for the right moment to return. And that moment was now. "You don't have to do this," Ethan said, his voice hoarse as he backed away from the glowing crystal. "I can stop it. I can shut it down." The intruder's expression remained unreadable, but it tilted its head slightly. "You can try, human, but you'll fail. It's already too late." Ethan's mind raced, but he didn't give up. His eyes flicked to the control panel and the crystal again. There had to be a way to destroy it, something he could use to stop the station from rising. He couldn't let this ancient power be unleashed on the galaxy. Not again. As he turned toward the control panel, a sudden surge of energy flooded the room, knocking him to the floor. The crystal flared brightly, the energy surrounding him, pulling him in. The station trembled again, and Ethan's vision blurred as everything around him seemed to stretch and warp. The walls around him seemed to bend with the force of the power being released in that moment. A single thought echoed in his mind: the truth is out there. But so is the danger, and then everything went black. The awakening Ethan's vision swam back into focus slowly, the world around him a blur of shifting colors and distorted shapes. His body felt heavy, like he was sinking into the floor itself. He tried to move, but his limbs were unresponsive, as though his very essence had been pulled from him and left in a state of suspended animation. The last thing he remembered was the overwhelming power of the crystal, its pulsing energy flooding the room. The station's walls seemed to breathe around him, shifting and undulating with the rhythm of the crystal's power. Then, a sudden, sharp gasp. His lungs filled with air, and his body jerked awake, his heart racing as if it had been running a marathon. He gasped, struggling to sit up, but the motion sent a wave of dizziness crashing over him. His head felt as though it was splitting in two. "Easy," a voice said, low and calm, the same cold, mechanical tone he had heard before. But this time, There was something different about it, an odd softness, almost a sense of detachment. The figure, the one who had been chasing him, was standing before him now, but it was no longer the same faceless soldier. This one was different, the suit more refined, more intricate, almost organic. The red eyes dimmed slightly, as though the being was now focusing on him with a strange sense of clarity. Ethan's mind raced as he pushed himself up, his legs unsteady beneath him. He could barely make sense of what was happening. The station was still alive, still humming with energy, but something had shifted. The weight of the power was no longer just a threat, felt like it had a presence, something conscious, something ancient. What did you do to me? Ethan asked, his voice raw, but he stood taller now, defiant, even as the confusion clouded his thoughts. You were exposed to the core, the figure said, its voice now laced with something like an emotion. Pity, the crystal connects to your mind, your consciousness. You've been chosen. Ethan staggered backward. Chosen for what? What the hell is going on here? The figure took a step forward, its movements deliberate. The energy around it felt more intense now, its presence almost suffocating. The light in its eyes flickered briefly, as though it were processing Ethan's words. You are connected to the station now. The activation of the crystal has bound you to it. Ethan blinked, confusion turning into disbelief. Bound to it. What the hell does that mean? The figure raised a hand, palm facing him, and in that instant, the room shifted. The walls seemed to warp and distort, the station itself groaning under the pressure. The floor beneath Ethan's feet vibrated. He felt a rush of cold wind, like the station's atmosphere was being drawn into the crystal, pulled through a massive system of unseen conduits. Listen to me, human, the figure said, its tone more serious now. You've unlocked the core of the station. You've seen the records, the forbidden alliance that your people made with ours. The station is not just a relic, is the key to an ascension, a link between your people and the forgotten ones. You have awoken what should have stayed asleep. Ethan's heart thudded in his chest. Ascension, forgotten ones. He couldn't believe it, couldn't wrap his head around the implications of what the figure was saying. His mind was still reeling from the revelations in the records, but this was something far darker than he could have imagined. You are no longer just a human, the figure continued. The crystal has begun to rewrite your biology, your essence. You are becoming something else, something connected to this station, to its legacy. You are becoming part of the forgotten. The words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. He staggered backward, trying to steady himself. No, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't come here to become part of some ... experiment. The figure remained unmoving, its glowing eyes fixed on him. It's not a choice. You have already been chosen. Ethan's mind raced as he took in the enormity of what the figure had said. This wasn't just about survival anymore. The activation of the crystal had done something to him, something irreversible. He could feel it now, a strange pull in his veins, a sensation that something inside him was changing, growing. But there was something else, a faint echo, a whisper in the back of his mind. It was subtle at first, a voice too faint to understand, but it was there, clear enough for him to feel its presence. The station itself, the Forbidden Alliance, was not just a forgotten pact. It was alive, sentient, and it was calling to him. It wanted something from him. The walls around him seemed to pulse with the energy of the crystal. The figure was still there, waiting, its gaze unyielding. Ethan's mind snapped back to the moment. He clenched his fists, trying to fight off the panic that was rising in his chest. "What do you want from me?" he demanded, voice shaking. "What happens now?" The figure's response was chilling in its simplicity. "The cycle must continue. The power you've unleashed will spread. It cannot be stopped. But you, human, will be the one to decide whether the galaxy ascends or descends into chaos. You will either control this power or become its next victim." As the figure's words echoed in Ethan's mind, the station around him seemed to respond, the very air crackling with energy. The crystal pulsed brighter, and the room shifted again, revealing something terrifying, a glimpse of the future, of worlds burning, of stars dying, and of a galaxy consumed by the power of the Forbidden Alliance. "You're not in control anymore," the figure said softly. "You never were." Ethan's breath hitched. It was true. The fate of everything was in his hands. Now he had no idea if he could stop it.